Let's talk about how the Washington Post and the New York Times just dropped two massive pieces saying that some of the most popular podcasts and YouTube channels in America, they are casting doubt about the integrity of the 2024 election, with experts saying what was described as a free flow of misinformation could prime listeners not to accept the election and even boost support for Trump and others who would want to challenge the outcome if he loses. Right? And with this, their scope wasn't small, right? They weren't talking about a couple of podcasts. With, for example, the Washington Post saying that according to a new analysis, these doubts about the 2024 election have been aired by more than 24 popular podcasts, with some of the most prominent of those 26 programs they talked about, including the Joe Rogan Experience, which of course is the single most popular podcast in America. They also mentioned some other big names like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk. The New York Times also prominently displaying several, including Tim Pool and Tucker Carlson.
This is election interference by Joe Biden.
They're cheating already in Michigan.
Your party rigged many of the voting rules in advance of the election.
All the sadness we've seen after the clearly stolen election,
which makes it clear that the election was stolen.
With the Washington Post saying that all 26 shows it analyzed, quote, have amplified unfounded assertions, including that the election will be rigged or stolen. Right? And with all this, you have people arguing that this is incredibly significant, not just because it's happening, but because specifically podcasts in this election cycle have played a huge role, right? In a way we've never seen before, with the Washington Post writing. Both Trump and Harris have embraced a medium that nearly 100 million Americans listen to weekly. And this is some of those podcasts have even provided a platform for Trump to come on himself and make those lies direct to consumer, with probably the most notable recently being Trump's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. Right? I mean, just on YouTube, that thing racked up 40 million views. And while there, Trump lied about a number of things, but he also repeatedly made false claims about the election. With him going through many of his greatest hits with little pushback from Rogan. And at one point, Rogan even tried to downplay Trump's election denialism by claiming that a lot of Democrats have also denied elections in the past.
One of the things that was fascinating also was the denial of the election results is a pretty common thing. Hillary Clinton famously denied that, and she called you an illegitimate president, and she said that Russia put you in place.
Even though she conceded.
Yes.
She conceded the night of the election because she was beaten.
Yes, and it was a thing that was pretty common for people, especially Democrats, to deny the elections. There's been many of them. The Bush administration, the dangling chads, all that stuff. My point is, this idea of election fraud is a forbidden topic. And you get labeled an election denier.
Right. One, even Donald Trump in that interview noted that Hillary Clinton conceded. And two, that is a false equivalency to say that she contested the election results, when what she really did was simply point out, and it is a well-documented fact, that Russia tried to interfere in our election by fucking with stuff on Facebook and other places. Also, at another point in the Rogan interview, it appeared that he tried to lead Trump with a question about election vulnerabilities and fraud, but then failed to push back on anything he said.
Let's talk about the potential vulnerabilities for elections and election fraud. One of them is mail-in ballots. The other one is if someone can break into voting machines, if someone can hack voting machines. Those are two huge ones.
So
and
Elon
can be
Musk,
done?
Elon Musk, I think he said it publicly. I hope he did because I wouldn't want to be the one. But he's a really smart guy, and he's a very good guy with computers. Right? He said to me that unless you have paper ballots, it can never be an honest election. That's a big statement.
It's a big statement.
We should go to paper ballots. Now we have these sophisticated machine. It goes up to heaven. It goes all over the place and down and around. And they say, we'll need 2 weeks to figure out who the hell won the election.
Do you think that's by design?
Yeah, I do. I think it's very crooked. That's my opinion.
Now, notably here, I will say Rogan did ask Trump a few times if he had evidence for his election fraud claims. But when Trump finally answered, he kind of just accepted his response, which was, I'll just let you see it for yourself.
The 2020 elections, you say you have all this evidence that it was rigged. Why haven't you put this evidence in a consumable form? In what?
Oh, I did. I have books on it. And by the way, books have been written on it. We have an author named Hemingway, who is a great writer. She wrote a book on it, but many books have been written on it.
Now, with all that, I do think that it is notable that Rogan did at least try to press Trump on certain issues, right? I criticized Rogan about this and other things in the past. He may have blind spots like we all do, but he does seem to be attempting to get some answers on some of these topics. And that's more than can be said about a number of other people out there. But of course, with this, Rogan's just kind of one of the latest podcasters who have platformed false election claims. With, for example, the Washington Post saying on 14 of the shows that they analyzed, either the host or a guest repeated the Trumpism that his supporters need to overcome an inevitable attempt to steal the election by ensuring their turnout's too big to rig. Also, they said they found 19 podcasts had promoted the baseless claims that Democrats are trying to sway the election in their favor by registering non-citizens to vote. Additionally, some of the shows have been echoing some of the false claims Trump's used to try and undermine the election, with that reportedly including an episode of the Charlie Kirk Show just this month, with there, Kirk asking his guest, Tom Fitton, head of the conservative group Judicial Watch, if he thought the election was fixed. And Fitton responds by just lying and saying it's illegal for votes to be counted after Election Day, even though literally some states mandate that practice. And then claiming that the processes in Arizona and Pennsylvania are structured, quote, to steal the election if need be. Now, with all this, I will say that the two pieces seem to kind of go in slightly different directions. The New York Times piece seems more about money and also in particular YouTube, referencing the Tenet Media scandal that we covered earlier this month, writing RT allegedly funneled the money through Tenet Media, which operated a YouTube channel with more than 16 million views, and then adding Tenet then paid popular pundits to create content, including Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, with them also specifically giving a lot of attention to YouTube ads on this content, reporting that the 30 conservative channels they analyzed had posted 286 videos containing election misinformation, and in total, those videos garnered more than 47 million views, and YouTube generated revenue from ads on more than a third of them. The researchers also said that they found some of the channels made money from their videos and monetization features available to members of the YouTube Partner Program. But with all that, very notably here, a YouTube spokesperson said none of the 286 videos violated its community guidelines, saying in a statement, the ability to openly debate political ideas, even those that are controversial, is an important value, especially in the midst of election season, and specifically around money, saying most of the 30 track channels are ineligible for advertising and some had previously violated the company's content policies, and saying this report demonstrates our consistent approach to enforcing our policies. Right, and all of that is the Washington Post piece kind of focused more on the mediums themselves and the tools that they have, with the Post reporting that because podcasts operate largely outside the view of the tech industry monitors, that they're more vulnerable to disinformation than many other sources. But with all that said, of course, that is just one part of this story. Right? Because once these stories dropped, we ended up seeing the subjects of the pieces as well as their supporters and fans reacting. Right? Ben Shapiro saying the Washington Post and New York Times just simultaneously dropped pieces calling for the destruction of conservative media and saying these are supposed guardians of the free press and free speech. What unbelievable liars. Elon Musk saying the New York Times is pure propaganda. And actually all of this is we knew that these pieces were going to come out thanks to the subjects of them, with several of the creators tweeting out questions they were getting about these pieces from the people writing it. With Tucker Carlson, for example, sharing this text message that includes a number of questions. You can pause here to read that yourself. With Tucker then responding, so the New York Times is working with a left-wing hate group to silence critics of the Democratic Party. Please ask yourself why you're participating in it. This is why you got into journalism? It's shameful. I hope you're filled with guilt and self-loathing for sending me a text like this. Please quote me. And then to the response in question, would you like to address any of the points or questions above? He said, would I like to participate in your attempt to censor me? No thanks. But I do hope you'll quote what I wrote above and also note that I told you to fuck off, which I am now doing. Thanks. But again, all of this is developing in real time. We'll have to see if anything actually comes from this, any sort of fallout. You know, in the meantime, I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts here? And really it can be about any and all aspects of what we talked about, because obviously it's all connected, but there are certain levels to this thing. Where they're spreading outright lies and misinformation yourself. There's also having guests on and not pushing back, which is obviously a different thing. Some of that can just be, you know, it can have an impact, but that can be connected to just not being a good or well-informed interviewer. And then, of course, there's the aspect of these two massive outlets dropping these pieces on the same day. But yeah, again, that's the situation. That's what the stories are saying. That's what the subjects of the stories are reacting with right now. And of course, I'd love to know your thoughts. Hey, thanks for watching. And I hope you enjoyed this clip from the full Philip DeFranco show. And also a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring our Clips channel. Turn your passion into profit over at squarespace.com/Phil or use the QR code. Because whether you're launching a business or a lucrative side hustle, your website is your digital business card. It's the only space where you control the story, no algorithms or distractions. And with Squarespace, it's so easy because they got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple. No coding required. So get started for free at squarespace.com/Phil or scan the QR code on screen and use code Phil for 10% off when ready to launch. Squarespace.com/Phil.